Hello and welcome everybody to another puzzle challenge video with chessuniversity.com. This is Ryan Murphy, and I'd like to start off once again by presenting first the solution to yesterday's puzzle and then moving on to our new position for the day. The new position is going to be a puzzle for players rated under 1500, so it's an intermediate difficulty puzzle, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But first, this is where we left off at the end of the last video, and it's white to play and checkmate in 2 moves. So if you haven't already taken time to solve this and you'd like a chance to do so, please do pause the video now because I will proceed with the solution. So, all right. It's white to play, like I said, and in the game, white played the move queen takes a8, which is perfectly good move. White's completely winning. They're up so much material, it hardly matters what they do. But there is a way to force checkmate in 2 moves. So the first move, and again, last chance to pause. If not, I'm going to proceed with the solution. First move is to give check with the queen on d6. And now there are 3 ways for black to get out of check. They can interpose with the bishop, or they can move the king either to c8 or to e8. Let's examine each opportunity or each option in turn. If bishop to d7, then the bishop is pinned, and we can simply deliver mate with rook to f8. Notice that the bishop cannot block on d7 again because it would be giving the king in check. So the bishop can't move, there's no way to block, and there's nowhere to run. So that's checkmate. Going back after queen d6, same thing would happen if king to e8. Rook to f8 is a nice checkmate, creating this like triangle formation, which is a very typical way of harmonizing the queen and the rook for mating purposes. It can work even, it obviously works best at the edge of the board, but you can repeat this pattern in the center of the board to push a king towards the edge. And the other option, as I mentioned, is here. And this way we deliver a different checkmate pattern with bishop to a6 with sort of a crisscross mate, where the bishop and queen take the different diagonals and cover all the squares around the king. And that's pretty much it. Those are all different checkmates in 2, and they all begin with the move queen d6. So it is forced checkmate no matter which option black picks. So with that puzzle now solved, let's move on to our next position. This is our new puzzle for the day, and here it's black to play and win. Black already has, I would say, an overwhelming positional advantage based on the fact that white's pawn structure is horribly weak, and their king's also very weak, because they've pushed a lot of pawns on the king's side. It's difficult for them to castle that way without having their king under fire, and also it's very dangerous, obviously, to castle the other way on the queen side, because there's not a lot of pawn cover on that side either. So the biggest problem for white is that their king is pretty much in peril no matter where it goes. But currently it's in the center, and as we know, the king in the center is often in the most danger. So here it is black to play and win. There's one move which is much, much better than all the others, though there are plenty of moves that are strong here for black, just based on the fact that it's difficult for white to get their king safe. So try to find the best move for black if you can. That'll be the task for today's challenge. And as usual, I will rewind to the beginning of the game to show how we reached this position, which was played online in a 10 plus, I think it was 10 plus 5 time control. So blitz time control between basically a 14 and 1500 rated player. So 1400 was playing with the white pieces, and the black player was 1500. I believe they were siblings. So an interesting game just from that element. And this game began with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, and bishop to c5. So we have the Giuoco Piano, or the Italian game. Very symmetrical opening so far. Knight to c3, knight to f6, both sides developing in exactly the same manner. a3 is the first move. That's a little bit unusual to me, and probably not the best move, because as we know in the opening phase, it's important to develop the minor pieces, control the center, and get the king to safety. If a move does not address one of those things, usually you need a very good reason to play it. Usually that move has to create a large threat against one of your opponent's pieces, or defend against one of their threats. There are some exceptions where you can try to grab space on certain parts of the board, but usually if you're breaking those fundamental 3 principles of development, central control, and king safety, you have to have very good reasons for it. And a3 just doesn't strike me as a very urgent need. Like, I don't think white needs this move in their position. If black had wanted to put the bishop on b4 on the previous move, they could have done so, but they're not going to spend an extra move trying to put the bishop here. So I don't think really stopping any piece from coming to b4 is that important. And the move b4 is a possibility, but it's not really that important either, because the bishop will just simply drop back to the b6 square if it's attacked, and it basically has the same functions as it would have on c5. So a3 doesn't really help white very much in this position. It doesn't harm them particularly much either, but it's just not a move you want to prioritize in the opening. It kind of costs you time. So in this position, black plays, I would say, a similarly slow move, moving the bishop a second time to b6. Probably they were concerned about b4, but it wasn't really an issue because they could have just moved the bishop in the event of b4. You didn't have to preempt the move. So for example, like let's say black had instead castled, right? Or gone d6. I think d6 is very solid because it protects this pawn in a very nice way. So it's always protected by a pawn on e5. But let's just say castles to show what maybe white was threatening or what black was worried that white was threatening. So if here, bishop to b6, let's say, maybe something like this is what black was worried about, and they noticed that now if their knight moves away, then there's nothing protecting this pawn. And if they saw that and they realized that the move they played prevents this idea, then that's that's pretty good. But as it turns out, because black is so far ahead in development, white spent all this time pushing pawns. Black can easily get away with the move knight d4, and there's no way that white should be able to get away with taking on e5. That's just not how chess works. So for just to prove it to you guys, after knight takes e5, I would recommend you guys pause here. There's a couple different ways to sort of punish this type of greed, but I'll let you try to figure out what you would do here. Okay, so one very nice option, this is very forcing, just maximally trying to go after the king while it's still in the center. So you could do something like queen e7 or queen e8, which is one very natural approach, just trying to create a skewer towards the e4 pawn. That seems very good. But another very nice forcing approach is d5. Immediately breaking open the center, trying to get this pawn to move off of the e file so that the pin becomes more absolute. And here, white can of course take the pawn in a variety of ways, but almost in any case, like you still have queen e7 and queen e8 as follow-up ideas. Plus, if they take, let's say knight takes, bishop takes. Now here, again, you're going to have queen e7 as an interesting option. It looks very, very good, but also additionally, this move, queen to g5, is incredibly strong because it threatens not only the knight, but also the pawn on g2, which then will lead to the rook in the corner, and things will fall apart very, very quickly for white. White's probably completely lost here because I don't see a way to stop both of these threats. So just to show that if black was worried about b4, b5, trying to win this pawn, white just can't get away with that kind of time wasting in the opening. So, okay, anyway, so that's just sort of a lesson of how like general opening principles. If you have a sound belief in that following the opening principles should work out for you, usually stuff like this just doesn't work out through tactics, and this is just a proof that tactics will back up positional understanding most of the time. Okay, so h3 played, again, not a very important move in the position, and here actually there's a nice tactic which black plays. Knight takes e4, followed by d5, getting basically better control on the center. Takes. Now here I should say already that bishop takes d5 is a very common mistake when white walks into this center fork trick, and the correct way to play almost always is to keep the bishop and play bishop d3 and then to recapture. Now here black is still doing fine. White might be threatening to play bishop takes c6 in the future and then take this pawn, but again, at the current moment, I don't think it's a real threat. So I think castling's probably fine here. For example, if takes, and takes, we're going to see our old friend rook e8, and using the same pin concept that we saw in the previous variations, where white tried to win this pawn. So yeah, usually the approach with bishop d3 is what white should do, but black can just develop normally and they have a good position. So bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3 back, queen goes back to d8. I like black's position already because their development is very natural and they have a pawn strongly placed in the center. Castles, bishop g5, f6, nice move, just hitting the bishop. Bishop back to e3, bishop to a5, creating a pin. This move's actually not very good because it sort of walks directly into the move b4. So you don't want to encourage your opponent's pawns to push forward unless you can like prove that they're weak immediately and undermine them, but this isn't one of those cases. So here bishop a5 I don't like. I think just developing bishop e6 or rook e8 would have been more useful. But anyway, bishop a5, bishop c5 was played. Takes with check, takes, rook e8, c4. And again, like pretty much on most moves, I'm going to recommend that white castles. Castling is definitely what white should do. Their position has some doubled pawns and isolated a pawn, but there's nothing terrible going on here, really. I mean, black is definitely slightly better, but white should castle. Just try to stay solid. So c4 is played, b6, bishop e3, bishop to f5, probably with the intention of looking to place a move like e4 at some point. Knight to d2, knight to d4, pawn to g4, which I think is very weakening, bishop to g6, and pawn c3, which is a huge blunder that allows our puzzle position from the beginning of the video. So hopefully you guys can solve this one. If you make your comments on chessuniversity.com, you can get rewards points on the website towards future purchases. If you want to check that out and make your solution post there, do check out the YouTube description because I'll have a link for that post in the description. So with that, that's pretty much concluding the video. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see everyone tomorrow.